Hello and welcome to a bit of a different video here on Hedge Works Motorsport. It's the midway point of the British Touring Car season for this year. So I thought, as we're now on the summer break and there's not any racing till the end of this month, so we've got a bit of time to wait in terms of the next proper championship round, I thought we'd have a look back on the season so far. And like I said, it's a little bit of a different video for me. Usually I like to be out there speaking to other people, but I thought, as racing's on hold for a little while, I thought I'd just share some of my opinions on the season so far and discuss what has been quite an interesting year. Also significant about this video, may I add, it is the 200th video on the channel, which is insane to me. I can't believe we got that far. So yeah, cheers to 200 and yeah, enjoy the video. You probably remember we did a video actually like this last year and it went down well, and like I said, it's nice to just sometimes just sit and have a chat about the kind of main championship that I love and follow. So as always, we've got quite a lot of drivers to get through, even in a season where during the winter break we lost a few teams, didn't we? Lost a few drivers from who we'd expect to be competing, but it's still been a pretty competitive year, and there's been some great races along the way. But starting down in 27th, we've got Nick Halstead. He's in the 4th Accelerate Hyundai. It's been a bit of a difficult one for him. You just got to remember, he's still learning the championship, and he's had success in British GT and those kind of cars, but little butterfly going through there. It's nice to be out in the garden, isn't it? But you just got to remember he's learning, isn't he? There's no championship in the world like the BTCC. Even other touring car categories, like whether it's TCR or in the world of days of world touring cars, you can't compare it at all. Where else in the world do they race MGTC cars, especially with the hybrid now, it came in last year, didn't it? But it's a real different challenge. He keeps learning. He obviously did score points in that crazy race 2 at Donington where it was rain affected, but I think due to penalties he lost them to some kind of penalty. I'm not quite sure what went on, but I can't actually remember now, to be honest. But at least we know he's got a quick car under him, and you know what? I think he is a nice addition to the grid in the sense that I've seen, particularly via British Touring Car Chat group on Facebook, which you should go and check out if you've not joined it already. If you haven't joined it, where have you been? I can't lie, that's for me best touring car group on Facebook, supporting lots of young drivers and that sort of thing. But he gets involved with that sort of thing. He does live videos and he's done hot laps with fans. So yeah, no, he gets the fans involved, which is an important thing. I think that's good for BTCC. Next up in 26th, we've got Jade Edwards. Jade, it's been a bit of a difficult season for Jade, really, hasn't it? She's a class driver, and we know pace is there. She's had some great races in the past, and you know what? The final race before the summer break at Aitken, she was good. A bit unlucky with contact in some of the races, but she got the tyre strategy right, and she came 16th in the final race. So close to points, and points will come before the end of the year. If that keeps on going. The pace of the car's improving. She's always learning. She's got Snetterton, which is her least favourite circuit, out of the way. Nicole, is it one you enjoy?
Absolutely not. No, this is probably one of my least favourite circuit layouts. The atmosphere here and the fan access is always brilliant, but as a track itself, I've always struggled a little bit here. It's the hairpins, it's the slower technical stuff. I'm a little bit impatient with that sort of thing, so I'm looking forward to getting to Thruxton, where it's a little bit more close your eyes and hold on. But yeah, the car seems okay. We were just getting through a bit of housework and a few little tweaks in that session, so hopefully we'll progress over the weekend.
So yeah, she'll be on the up, but you just got to remember, Team Hard this year, they're running 6 cars, which it's just unbelievable, really, isn't it? That's a massive effort for them to be putting in every weekend. Long gone, I feel, are the days of teams running either just 1 or 2 cars. It's crazy to think that the minimum amount of cars per team this year is 3, I think. Which I know it's a business, but yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Next up, we've got Jack Butel. I feel like at times his season this year has sort of been plagued by mechanical issues. I think he's had a fair few races where he's hardly made it to the grid, and once again, dare I say, that's the effect of Team Hard running so many cars. I suppose that's going to happen from time to time. But I think Jack's in a good place. Still learning the touring cars in the sense that what he's done in the past is massively different from this. GT and endurance racing, and even a bit of single seaters. You can't really compare it, can you? But he's getting there. He's got the thing is he has got a really good team around him in the sense that he's got some great drivers helping him. Working together. Having Dan in the team now is surely going to help. Team Hard are constantly growing their engineering side of things. They've had Matt Neal in the garage at times this year, which that's always going to help. So Jack is just going to keep going, and yeah, he'll be in the points more consistently, I imagine, before the end of the year. Just ahead of him in the standings is Will Powell, who's in the third One Motorsport Honda. Just ahead of him in 23rd is Nicholas Hamilton. It's been a great year for Nick. Just starting off the season at Donington with that 6th place. He finished 7th on the road, but he then did get promoted up, didn't he? So 6th on the road, his best ever finish in the BTCC. His brother Lewis was there to see him. What more can you want, really? He's been a lot more consistent. Other than that race as well. He's been solid. That car's constantly improving. I reckon he may well be in the points before the end of the year again. You can never know with motorsport, especially with British motorsport, and even more so with the touring cars. So it was so good to see him get that 6th place at Donington, and still for me, probably the best race of the year by quite some distance for me. So yeah, just ahead of him, we've got Dexter Patterson in one of the other Team Hard Cupras. And you've got to remember this year's a bit of a learning year, I'd say, for Dexter. We did have a chat with him earlier in the year at Snetterton, but he's still enjoying life in the BTCC. You've got to remember he's still super young. He's got plenty of time to continue building, and that's likewise with the next driver that I'll be talking about in a second. But yeah, first year in front-wheel drive, he was obviously in a very troublesome Infinity last year, which is rear-wheel drive. So it's obviously going to be a very different dynamic. You can't really compare the two styles, can you? So yeah, he's doing good things. I think he'll be more consistently in the points. I think I've said that about every driver, but I think that is the thing with touring cars at the minute. Literally, so many drivers could have the pace to be right up there, but it's just such a competitive season, as always, such a competitive grid. It's so difficult to get even in that top 15 where you score points. So look out for Dexter. I think the rest of the year he'll be solid.
Yeah, no, for sure. Especially come from single seaters, which is like, I guess if you come from tin tops, then there's always a bit of rubbing, but you can't get away with that in single seaters or else bits just start flying off it. Whereas in this championship, that's sort of a bit of part of the game. It is a bit of rubbing as racing, I guess, a lot of the time. But that is more exciting. So it's a lot more exciting to watch compared to anything else that's really on in the British Racing Series.
So just ahead of him is another young driver, Ronan Pierce. Now, I was so happy to see Ronan get a seat in the touring cars. With what I do these days, I try not to pick a certain driver to support or whatever. I support the touring cars as a whole, to keep it sort of as professional as possible. I was so over the moon to see Ronan get a seat. I've sort of supported him throughout his time in the JCW Minis, done interviews with him there, and it was always great to see him in that because he was always super exciting. I remember in 2022 him having that amazing battle with Sam Weller at Silverstone for the win, which was just JCW Mini Challenge at his best. So to see him get in the touring cars was amazing. To see him get that podium at Donington at round 1 was amazing. Unfortunately, we all know he did lose that due to a ride height failure, but what a weekend. And he put a post out on social media the other day saying that he thinks, he says the season's going great because what he's doing is building the foundations of what is, all being well, going to be a long and successful career in touring cars. So I think he's doing a great job. I think perhaps his championship position of 21st doesn't quite represent where things are. I think, he's had some bad luck, he's had some contact with people, but at Donington to be that high up there, don't get me wrong, there was a couple of mistakes along the way. In race 1, he fell off the track during it. He went a bit deep, but it's all experience, isn't it? And he'll be on the podium before the end of the year, I'd like to think. And I remember saying it on my grid walk at Snetterton, which, if you haven't already, go watch that. It's a good video if I do so myself. Him and Tom Chilton have been massively equal, I think, this year. And, you know, Tom's one of the most experienced drivers on the grid. But yeah, real star of Donington for me. And another star of Donington was Andrew Watson in 20th. Now, when I was doing this, just looking where everyone was in the championship, I was kind of surprised Mr. Watson was that low down, to be honest, because he had that amazing start to the season at Donington in the wet. And I think it has been a little bit difficult since then. Maybe it's circuits, but actually, to be fair, we've been at Winter Thruxton and the Vauxhall always does perform nicely around there. And actually, now I've just said that, I remember he qualified really well, but he had an issue on the grid, didn't he? But yeah, we know the Vauxhall performs well there. Aaron Taylor-Smith and Mikey Doble, his two teammates, were right up there. And you know, it was a shame he had that issue on the grid, really, wasn't it? Because he could have done so much more. But Andrew Watson, what a star at Donington in the wet. You know, he was right up there in the mix, and Matt was brilliant to see. I mean, what a way to start the season. We were spoilt with that, really, weren't we? And speaking of teammates, Mikey Doble up in 19th. He's been doing a really good job. I don't think loads of people knew a huge amount about Mikey at the start of the season. Obviously, Ginetta champion and BMW champion in the past. So you know, plenty of experience. But like I've said before, there's nothing like touring cars. You can't really compare it with anything else, can you? So yeah, Mikey's doing good. We caught up with him at media day. You know what was really nice actually when I interviewed him? I could tell how excited he was to be in the touring cars, to be a part of it. It's, like I said, completely different, and the fan engagement is on another level, really, isn't it? And you don't see that in other championships. You know, British GT is massively popular, and you know TCR is massively growing, but the immense fan engagement with the BTCC is like nothing else.
Yeah, for all my life it's been me on the other end of it, you know, I've always been a fan of the BTCC, and you know, up until as recent as October last year I was still paying my money or trying not to pay my money, but still coming in and watching the racing from behind the catch fence. So to be a part of it now is a real pleasure.
So yeah, just ahead of him is George Gamble. He's in the Toyota Gazoo Corolla, factory colours, which dare I say is my favourite car and team. But yeah, George is doing a pretty good job. You've got to remember, this is his first ever race car that's front wheel drive. I mean, last year was a pretty big change in the sense that he'd never really done anything like touring cars, but that was in a rear wheel drive BMW, which perhaps is ever so slightly closer to the kind of things he's driven in the past. But yeah, never driven a front wheel drive car, but he's been doing great things, to be fair, hasn't he? I think it's unfortunate he's not a little bit higher in the championship, but he'll continue to grow. And you've got to remember his teammates, Rory Butcher and Ricky Collard, who we'll speak about in a little bit, have been in that seat. Well, Ricky was in it last year and Rory's been in it for the last 2 years, so of course they're going to have a bit of an advantage. But yeah, keep an eye on George for the rest of the year. He's a great driver, and I mean, we saw that last year, really, didn't we?
Been unfortunate in a few of the races not to quite get, we've been in, earshot of a podium in a couple, so we missed out a little bit on some better results. But overall, yeah, we've shown real good pace. Not been qualifying great, so we've had to come through in the race day, but yeah, getting the points there when we need them. So.
And the car overall seems to have made a big improvement since last year. Obviously, different engine. But overall, it must be a great outfit to be a part of. You know, I love the whole Toyota Gazoo branding, so that must be awesome.
Yeah, and I'm involved with the manufacturer, which is amazing. So there's the backing there from Toyota and a lot of support from the factory. So yeah, that's really cool to be a part of.
So as we continue to break further into the top 20, we get 17th place, and that's Dan Lloyd. Now, again, it's one of the many drivers in the touring cars, but we could say he's got the pace. He's just not quite had the luck this year, really. I feel like a lot of his weekends have been quite up and down, and a lot of the time that's not been his fault, whether it's been car problems or having contact with other drivers. But you know what, we've got Croft up next, and I think that should be a good round for him. He always runs well around there. He won 2 races there last year, but he always does perform well there. He got his first win there back in 2018 in the older generation Honda Civic FK2, it would have been, yeah, the FK2. So yeah, I think he's been, pace-wise, he has been very well matched with Bobby Thompson, who's a few places up on him. We'll speak about him in a little while. But he has been doing well. Pace is there. Keeping up with his YouTube channel as always, which you should go and, if you don't already subscribe to, go and subscribe. There you go, Dan, another good advertisement for you. But it's always interesting to see the behind the scenes of his weekends, why things have turned out like that. I think he had a change of engineer back at Snetterton, sort of midway through the season so far. So that's always going to maybe affect your progress a little bit. You want continuity, really, don't you? You want consistency with that sort of thing. So expect him to be a bit higher up the grid for the rest of the year. He's had some good performances, whether it be in qualifying or one of the races, but he needs that one just really solid weekend. And I think Croft could be that for him.
Yeah, it's difficult sometimes. Obviously, you're under a lot of pressure and the busy days and weekends. But it's like when I do the autograph sessions, when people say, "Oh, I really enjoy your vlogs," it makes me want to do them more, because obviously I think some people appreciate them, which is nice.
And just ahead of him, Sam Osborne, doing great things. First touring car podium back at Donington, where he didn't get it on the road, but he was then promoted up because of Ronan Pearson's disqualification we spoke about earlier. So he obviously got that third place. And you know what, I think the last couple of years have been quite difficult for Sam, especially last year when they bring in the likes of Ash and Dan Camish, two world-class drivers. You're always going to, perhaps, you're not going to look quite as good when you're compared to them, but he's continuing to learn, he's continuing to build, and it's been really nice to see him actually really up there. He's done some amazing things on that soft tyre. I think it was Brands Hatch. He really came through the field and got stuck in with some great battles. So yeah, Sam, I think, is doing a great job and using that car well. He's right up at the pointy end of the Jack Sears trophy battle, and I think he's got a good chance of winning that this year. So good on him. Just ahead of him in 15th is Aaron Taylor-Smith, settling in really well actually at his new team. I thought that he would be staying at Team Hard, but as we know with the touring cars, expect the unexpected with driver moves and that sort of thing. So I think that's quite a good move for him actually at Powermax. I was kind of surprised by it to start with, and I thought it was maybe a little bit of a sideward step, but I think he's actually really helping the team move forward. He's super experienced. I think a lot of people forget that. He's won races, got podiums, driven for some amazing teams in the past. So he's doing good things in that car. There's been times where I feel he has been outperformed by his other two teammates, but his experience of the championship, he knows the touring cars inside out, has helped him, and he has been a bit more consistent, and that's what's led him to be higher up than the other two in the championship. And just ahead of Aaron Taylor-Smith is a driver who he was teammates with actually last year. It's the final of the Team Hard Cupra runners. In 14th it's Bobby Thompson. But you know what, Bobby's just been super consistent. There's been some weekends where, Brands Hatch was amazing, which, dare I say, we've kind of come to expect now. He always runs well around there. The car, I think, is suited to Brands Hatch quite nicely. Obviously, they've got the motivation, I suppose, of it being a home round for the team. Bobby did great to get that second place, his best ever finish in the touring cars. And he's been right in the mix, actually, in some of the other races as well. So, he's been doing great. And I think, like I said, him and Dan Lloyd have been working well together. I think it's a shame that Dan's a few places down on him, because I don't think that quite represents where things are. I think they are very equal. So fair play, Bobbies. You've been doing a good job. And who knows, maybe a maiden championship win before the end of the year. I don't know though. We'll have to see. Those Napa Racing Fords are very, very difficult to get past at the minute, aren't they? But we'll discuss that later. Just ahead of him, Stephen Jelly. I think he's been a bit under the radar this year, to be fair, Jelly. Remember last year he won at Alton Park, didn't he, in the third race? But Jelly's been he's been bringing the points home quite nicely. Especially sort of in the third race, where, if you think about it, Jake and Colin will be up the front in race 1 and 2, and then the grid will be reversed, and then Stephen will kind of bring back some points, or even more points, I suppose, in the final race. So yeah, he's been doing good. obviously he's got a decent amount of experience in that car. But yeah, he's enjoying life, I think, in that BMW, and you know, I think it's a good place for him to be. It fits nicely, really, doesn't he? That's the car, or the brand of car, the make of car that he's been most experienced in the championship over the years. So yeah, nice fit. Another nice fit that I think we all sort of thought at the start of the year was Aidan Moffat. He's in 12th in the standings now. It's going to have been quite a difficult season for Aidan, to be fair. But he has got that podium, hasn't he, at Thruxton, which I was like, if it's going to happen at this point of the year anyway, it's going to be at Thruxton. We know how good that car is around there, especially in the hands of Josh Cook. But we've seen it with the likes of Michael Crease and Jason Plato last year, that car does work well around Thruxton. And you know, I think Josh and Aidan have been working really nicely together, and you know, Josh has been in that car since 2019 now, so like he's got plenty of experience. I know stuff has changed, and it's quite a slightly different car compared to how it was then with its setup, and obviously now the introduction of hybrids. But Aidan's, considering there's been some weekends where that car just hasn't been competitive, he has been doing quite a good job, and it's mad to think that Aidan's now probably one of the more experienced drivers on the grid. You know, when for such a long time he was, you know, the young gun of the championship, I suppose. So yeah, he's been doing good things. Just ahead of him in 11th is Tom Chilton. Another big step up from his season last year, I would say. Dare I say I was slightly disappointed in his season last year. I think it was a good fit that he moved to Accelerate. I think he fits in that team quite nicely. I was over the moon to see him win at Donington. I think he was in the past maybe a little bit like Dan Lloyd, where he's had to move teams a fair few times. You know, moving from Ford to BTC to Sicily, which was a complete nightmare for him, really, wasn't it? But yeah, he's been doing good. You know, he hadn't won since 2019 at Croft in race 3 in the Shredded Wheat Motorbase days. So great to see him do that, and he's been pretty consistent, you know, past that race as well. So yeah, no, good to see him do that. Just ahead of him, we've got Ricky Collard in 10th now. I feel like this is another driver who he's had immense pace, but you know what, some bad luck as well. And I think that is often a story with a lot of drivers in the touring cars. But I think there's been a lot of times this year where he has been outperforming Butcher quite significantly. Perhaps Butcher's been a little bit more consistent. That's why he's literally just ahead of him in the championship. But you know, the pace has been there massively. The steps they've took with that car over the winter were amazing, and it's a far superior car than it was last year. And actually, I think if you look at qualifying, Ricky's probably one of the most consistent drivers. You know, he's been right up there. He's had, you know, front row starts, and you know what I love about Ricky is he does put on a show. He's at the end of the day, he's a fan of the touring cars as well, isn't he? He's followed it for a long time. He's seen the likes of, you know, Jason Plato, Matt Neal, his dad, you know, race. And put on a show for the fans, you know, and get proper stuck in with some battles, get his elbows out and have fun with it, you know. I was gutted to see him lose that race win, and I know that would have been a massive thing for him to have to get over. So for him to sort of bounce back and still be on the pace and be right up there, mixing it in with some of the most experienced drivers, the likes of Turkington and Ingram and Sutton. He's doing a great job.
There's Ricky Collard. He's had a nightmare today. He's got such good pace, but absolutely no luck in the world. So yeah, let's see what he can do. He'll be all fired up. But yeah, he's had a bit of a nightmare really recently, hasn't he? He deserves a good result, and I reckon that win or podium is going to come.
And another driver who is due a win at some point is Rory Butcher. Again, similar to last year in a sense, that he has been a little bit under the radar at times. But we've got Silverstone and we're not too distant. He generally runs pretty well around there. I reckon he'll win a race there, which it's not as significant as like the likes of Josh Cook at Thruxton, but dare I say I'm sort of getting used to him winning there. So we'll have to see. And you know, that might be a good opportunity for Collard to win as well. He got his podium there back in when he was with West Surrey Racing back in 2018, standing in for his dad. So we got a podium there. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Let's keep an eye on those Toyota boys, because I think they're just going to keep on making progress. And like I said, for the likes of George Gamble as well, they're just going to keep on moving forward. So yeah, keep an eye on them. So up into 8th in the standings, and one of the other Napa Racing Ford Focus drivers is Dan Rowbottom, a driver I spoke about very passionately back in my grid walk at Snetterton, discussing how he's had a tricky season, to be fair. Admittedly, I'd say he's definitely in the best car on the grid, but when luck's not on your side, the championship is very difficult. We saw that last year with Dan Camish. He's had a lot of grief from a lot of different things, which I'll probably insert a clip from when I discussed it on the grid walk. But I was so happy to see him get that win at Thruxton in race 3, which was a long time coming. There's been a couple of weekends where he's been a little bit inconsistent, but we know pace is there, and I actually think him in that Napa Racing seat does fit really nicely. So I think a good career move for him.
And he's had a lot of grief as well. Ever since his move from Team Dynamics, he's had grief from people online, and obviously there was a bit of... He got some grief from the incident at Brands Hatch, which it was just one of those things. So there he is. You can see him now lining up in his grid spot, the number 32 car in the very striking Napa Racing UK colours.
And another good career move is Adam Morgan, who he's always driven for his family-run Sicily Motorsport team. Unfortunately, we did lose them from the grid over the winter, which, you know, let's be honest, it's just one of those things. However, this is the first time in the touring cars he's driven for like a full-on works factory team, and well, who better else to do it with than BMW? So he doesn't have to sort of worry about managing the team, and you know, he's driven the team lorry at times before. So he can really focus on doing the race driver sort of thing now, and that probably does show why he's so high up in the championship. Up in 7th, he's been super consistent, podium on his first weekend with the team, so you know, they're going to be happy with him, and he's a great asset to have with the team. He's been in that car the last couple of years. Overall, a nice fit. It makes sense why he's joined that team. In 6th place, we've got Josh Cook, and dare I say, I'm a little bit surprised he's that high, to be honest, due to some of the absolutely shocking kind of weekends in terms of pace that team's had. But he is experienced in that shape of car, that car in general. Despite being a little bit surprised he's that high up, he has been doing good with the resources he's had round him. And amazing to not see him actually win at Thruxton this year. Just couldn't get past Ash Sutton and Tom Ingram. And you could just tell how disappointed he was after qualifying, when he was topping the times in FP1 and FP2, but couldn't quite find that extra little bit of pace, which was a shame for him. But what an amazing run he's had at Thruxton, and he'll be back. He'll win more races there for sure. Into the top 5 we go, and that is Dan Camish in the 2nd Napa Racing Ford Focus. And he had an amazing start to the year, which, to be honest, is probably what he needed after the absolute nightmare he had, especially in the first half of last season. He was obviously super inconsistent. He had no luck in the world, but yeah, he had a really strong start. Won 2 races at Donington, pole at Brands Hatch, and at this point I was thinking, oh my word, Dan could be pretty unstoppable this year. Since then, he's had a bit of bad luck. He obviously, qualifying at Snetterton was a nightmare. He had to start from the back of the grid, which is not what you want, especially, you know, it makes it even more difficult on a weekend where it's all about strategy. He did get on the podium in race 3, but then lost it due to a technical infringement. So he's had his fair share of bad luck again this year, but it's been a lot better. It's been a lot more consistent. But you know, he's done pretty good. It's good to see him back on form, and he seems to be enjoying his racing again after, like, you know, quite a difficult year last year. But yeah, just ahead of him is the ever consistent Colin Turkington. He has won this year, back at Brands Hatch, but he's been pretty good. Dare I say, ever so slightly overshadowed by Jake. But those, Jake's up next, and we'll speak about him in a second. But those two, it's been great to see have such brilliant battles. but Colin, like I said, one of the most experienced drivers on the grid, super consistent, but you know what, he can battle through the field as well. There's been some days where he's started further back than we'd expect, and you know he's battled through. You know, for anyone that says that Colin Turkington doesn't overtake, all you have to do is just watch those races. Maybe he's not perhaps as pulling off some moves that are quite as wild as the likes of his teammate Jake or Tom Ingram or whatever. But they're very calculated, very well positioned. He positions the car very well in those kind of situations. So yeah, he's doing a good job. More race wins to come before the end of the year. The BMW, especially at Alton Park last time, is looking a lot better. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out for him, and I hope, and I do think that championship sort of battle is going to scrunch up a little bit more before the end of the year. Jake Hiller's up next. Fairly difficult start to the year for Jake, I would say, where it took him a while to actually get his first win, but when he did it. He had an amazing weekend, really, didn't he? At Alton, 2 first places, and I think he was second in race 3, wasn't he? He was pretty unstoppable there. The car just looked amazing. While it was Sutton on pole, Jake made the better start and he held on. I know Alton is a difficult circuit to overtake round, but he did a great job. And while he's still got a little bit of ground to make up in the championship hunt still, I think he will close in. I think by the end of the season, it is going to be very close. He's going to be up there going for it, and that's good to see again. And that very striking Laser Tools BMW. Just ahead of him is Tom Ingram, who again is in a super competitive car, probably quite overshadowed by Ash Sutton and the Ford Focus and how much more competitive that's been this year. But I'd definitely say the Hyundai was for sure the most competitive car last year. Of course, there are moments where the likes of the BMW were quicker, and dare I say the Ford. But Tom Ingram, he's been super consistent, and while he's not won as many races as Sutton and not filled the headlines as much as Ash has, he has been super consistent and scoring points, and he's not even that far behind Sutton in the championship. So don't write Ingram off yet. While everyone's been raving about how unstoppable Ash Sutton is at the minute, Ingram's been doing just as good a job, I would say. And you know, he's all you have to think about now with Sutton. He got a DNF in race 3 at Alton Park. Ingram then got back a lot of points there. It's so the gaps closed so easy. Even Ash Sutton had 4 race wins on the bounce. So yeah, don't write him off just yet. But with Ash Sutton, he's leading the championship. It is difficult at times to see anyone getting past him. But you know what? Fair play to him, Motorbase, Napa Racing. In the sense that car was pretty good last year. But Ford has always been a solid touring car, especially in 2020 when that first year of that generation of Focus came in. But just this year they've been pretty unstoppable. So fair play to them. Don't get me wrong. I love it always in a touring car when there's a really intense championship battle. Ideally when there's no dominant car, with a real mix of drivers going for the championship. Don't get me wrong, but you can't knock what the team have done and how well they're performing. And I think it is going to be like one of those things in the future. We're going to look back on this time period and be like, that was pretty amazing. So anyone giving grief to them should just sort of, rethink that a little bit. All you have to do is look back to the 90s and the Super Touring, which everyone, myself included, raves about how it's the best era of touring cars, the golden age of this category of racing. But most seasons, nowhere near as competitive as it is these days. Think about how badly the independent teams were treated in comparison to the manufacturers, and so many of those Super Touring years, they were dominant cars. So it's the same thing, just without the nostalgia as yet. We'll look back on those Napa Racing cars very fondly in the future, I would say. So that is pretty much everything we've got to discuss, really. We've gone through all the drivers, so yeah, thank you very much for watching, if indeed you still are. And yeah, we've got a little bit of time to wait for the end of the season. But like I said, it was a little bit of a different video today. I much prefer being trackside and interviewing drivers and speaking to them. It's not too often actually these days I'll do this kind of thing where I just sort of sit and speak my mind. But you know, it's good to do something a little bit different. And as touring cars, we've still got a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's nice to be kind of filling that gap a little bit, talking about touring cars. But you know, I think I've shown this year we've been, while touring cars is still very much my favourite championship, it's what I want to be working in for my career. It's been nice covering other things this year, so we've still got coming up more junior saloon car content, which will be good. We'll see them at Snetterton. We'll also be seeing at Snetterton return on Hedge Works Motorsport for British Superkart Racing Club, which is always popular. Love doing stuff with them, and you know, we're seeing how they're getting on at the minute, because that was a massively popular thing on my channel. So make sure you subscribe to them, and also we're going to have some slightly different content coming up for the rest of the year. As you guys know, obviously Snetterton's my local circuit, so my content is often very much based around their calendar, and it has been quite different this year in the sense that we've already had the touring cars. Usually it's kind of August, July kind of time. We also already had British GT and a lot of other big events like that. But we'll still be bringing trackside interviews, but also some very different content along the way too. But if you did enjoy the video, please do subscribe. It helps me out massively. We are closing in ever so slightly on that 400 subscriber mark, which, you know, would be amazing to get to sooner rather than later. So yeah, if you could do, please do. Like I said, it's absolutely free and it helps me out massively. And you know, hitting 200 videos now is a massive achievement. So thank you very much to everyone who have been watching the last 2.5 years. Who would have thought when I was interviewing Jack Butel on Zoom in lockdown for the first time, would be here 199 videos later. But I've been your host, Louis Hedge. Thank you very much for watching.